7 days. That's all it took for Louise Hay's ex-husband to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, after she applied the most controversial technique she ever created, a technique she called magnetic inversion, and kept secret for decades. Why the secrecy? Because it works too fast, because it's too powerful, and because Louise Hay knew some people weren't ready for this kind of power over another person's heart. But you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I know why you're watching this. I know what happened. I know what it feels like to experience that gut-wrenching blend of rage and despair when someone you love simply discards you. Like you're trash. Like all the love you built together was a lie, and everyone around you keeps repeating the same empty platitudes. You deserve better. What's meant to be, will be. Focus on yourself. Blah, blah, blah. You know what that is? It's cowardice, disguised as wisdom. Louise Hay thought differently. She believed that when you truly love someone, when you've built something real together, you have the right to fight for it. You have the right to use every resource available to reclaim what's yours. And yes, I said, what's yours? Because when two people completely surrender to each other, when they create deep bonds, when they build a history together, that can't simply be erased because one party decides to run from intimacy. Louise Hay knew this, and that's why she developed the most dangerous technique of her career. Dangerous because it works. Dangerous because it's irreversible. Dangerous because in 7 days, you'll have the person who rejected you, begging for a second chance. And then you'll have to decide if you still want to give that chance. But before I teach you this technique, I need to tell you the story Louise Hay hid from the world for 40 years. The story of her own divorce. The story of how she lost the love of her life, and how she brought him back using methods she never dared to put in any of her books. It was 1969. Louise Hay was married to Ethan Miller, a man she deeply loved, and who had promised her a lifetime together. They had plans, they had dreams, they had a connection she thought was indestructible, until the day Ethan came home and said he'd fallen in love with another woman, a younger woman, a woman he met at work, and that he was leaving Louise to be with her. Just like that, and out of nowhere. 15 years of marriage thrown in the trash because of a fleeting infatuation. Louise Hay was shocked. She was devastated. But after the shock came something much more powerful, the rage. And that rage was the fuel she used to create the most effective reconciliation technique the world has ever seen. Louise Hay didn't accept her husband's decision. She didn't respect his choice. She didn't wish him well. She decided to fight. She decided that 15 years of true love were worth more than his passing desire for a stranger. She spent 3 months studying human psychology, attraction patterns, the neurology of love, and everything she could find about deep emotional bonds, and she discovered something that changed everything. She discovered that when someone leaves a deep relationship, they don't leave because they stopped loving. They leave because they're afraid of the intensity of love. They're afraid of vulnerability. They're afraid of the commitment that true love demands, and the only way to bring these people back is not by chasing, not by begging, not by trying to convince them rationally. It's by creating such an intense emotional vacuum that they can't breathe properly away from you. Louise Hay called this magnetic inversion. Instead of running after them, you become an irresistible magnet. Instead of showing need, you cultivate an emotional abundance that they miss every second of the day. And it works in 7 days. Always 7 days. Why 7 days? Louise Hay discovered that 7 days is exactly how long it takes for someone to fully process the absence of a person who was emotionally central in their lives. In the first 3 days, they feel relief, good riddance. In the next 2 days, restlessness begins. Why didn't she try to stop me? In the last 2 days, despair sets in. What did I do? How could I throw away the best thing in my life? On the 7th day, they come back. Louise Hay first tested this technique on her own marriage, and it worked. Ethan returned on the 7th day, begging for forgiveness, saying he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. But Louise Hay didn't stop there. She tested the technique with other people over the years, women who had been left by their husbands, men who had lost their wives, always in secret, always with warnings about the responsibility that comes with this kind of power. And it always worked, always in 7 days. But here's what Louise Hay discovered that's most important. This technique only works when the love between you was real, when there was a true connection, when you really surrendered to each other at some point. The technique doesn't create love where there is none. It reactivates love that has been temporarily blocked by fear, insecurity, or the emotional immaturity of the other person. If your ex never really loved you, if you never had a deep connection, the technique won't work. But if you had something real, if there was true love between you, then this technique will work in a way that will surprise you. Because deep down, Louise Hay knew a truth that our society prefers to hide. True love doesn't disappear. It just hides behind fear. And when you remove the fear, when you create the right conditions, love returns to the surface with full force. That's what happened with Sarah, one of the few people Louise Hay taught this technique to in 1987. Sarah had been left by her boyfriend of 5 years, who said he needed space to grow. 5 years of relationship thrown away because he wanted to find himself. Sarah applied Louise Hay's technique. On the 7th day, he showed up at her door crying, saying he'd realized that growing meant growing with her, not away from her. Or Miguel, who lost his wife after 10 years of marriage because she fell in love with a co-worker. Miguel applied the technique. On the 7th day, she called saying she'd broken up with the other man and wanted to talk about coming home. Or Anna, whose husband said the marriage had lost its passion and that he wanted to separate to find himself. Anna applied the technique. On the 7th day, he sent 24 roses with a card, asking for a chance to reignite the passion within their marriage. 7 days. Always 7 days. But Louise Hay made sure to warn, this technique comes with a price. The price is that once you apply it, once they return, you'll know forever that you have the power to emotionally manipulate anyone who ever loved you. And with great power comes great responsibility. That's why she only taught this technique to a handful of people. People she knew would use this power wisely. People who understood that winning someone back is only the first step. The real work begins afterward, when you need to rebuild the relationship on a more solid foundation. But maybe you're at a point in your life where you need this power, where you need this certainty that you can bring back the person you love, where you need to prove to yourself that 15 years of marriage, or 5 years of dating, or 2 years of living together are worth more than a moment of insecurity from the other person. If that's the case, then you're ready to learn the technique Louise Hay called magnetic inversion. But before I teach you, you need to understand exactly why this technique works. Because if you don't understand the psychology behind it, if you apply it mechanically without understanding the principles, it won't have the same effectiveness. Louise Hay's technique is based on 3 fundamental psychological pillars. First pillar, perceived scarcity. When someone leaves a relationship, they automatically assume you'll chase after them, that you'll beg, that you'll try to convince them to stay. They expect it. They prepare to resist your desperation. But when you don't do any of that, when you simply disappear, they panic. Because suddenly you've become scarce, and everything that's scarce automatically becomes more valuable. Louise Hay discovered that desperation is repulsive, but indifference is magnetic. Second pillar, cognitive dissonance. When someone ends a relationship, they create a mental narrative to justify the decision. She was too clingy. He didn't understand me. We had nothing in common anymore. But when you completely disappear from their lives, when you stop validating that narrative through your behavior, they begin to question whether the narrative was correct. And then they start to remember all the good times you had together. Human memory is selective. When you're present, they remember the problems. When you're absent, they remember the pleasures. Third pillar, emotional anchors. Every deep relationship creates emotional anchors. Songs that remind them of you, places where you were happy, smells that trigger memories unto rituals you shared. When you're together, these anchors become invisible. They're part of everyday life. But when you disappear, each anchor becomes an open wound. Every song that played on the radio becomes torture. Every familiar place becomes an emotional minefield. And the more anchors you created together, the more unbearable your absence becomes. Louise Hay understood that you don't need to convince someone to come back to you. You just need to become unbearably absent from their lives. And that's exactly what the magnetic inversion technique does. But here's what you need to understand before applying it. This technique requires total emotional strength. It requires you to be able to completely disappear for 7 days, without giving in, without texting, without calling, without spying on social media. 7 days of absolute silence. Can you do that? Are you strong enough to disappear from the life of the person you love for 7 whole days? Because if you can't, if you crack on the 3rd day and send a message, if you give in on the 5th day and call, you'll destroy the entire effect of the technique. Worse than that, you'll validate their decision to leave you. Louise Hay used to say, "Strength isn't enduring the pain. Strength is transforming pain into power." And that's what you're going to do over the next 7 days. You're going to transform the pain of rejection into the power to win back the one you love. But only if you're really ready. Only if you're sure you want this person back in your life. Because once you apply this technique, once they come crawling back, you'll have to decide if you still want to give them a chance. And that might be the hardest decision of your life. Now stop. Take a deep breath. Feel the anger you're carrying. Feel the injustice of what happened to you. Because this anger, this indignation, is exactly the fuel you're going to use to apply the most powerful technique Louise Hay ever created. The magnetic inversion technique has 7 phases, 1 for each day. 7 phases that will transform you from someone who was rejected into someone who is irresistibly needed. But before you begin, you need to understand one fundamental thing. Over the next 7 days, you will symbolically die. The desperate person who chases, who begs, who tries to convince, that person needs to die so that the powerful woman who reconquers can be born. Louise Hay called this rebirth through absence, and it begins now. Day 1. Total disappearance. On the first day, you're going to do something that goes against all your instincts. You're going to completely disappear from his life. Completely. Block him on all social media. Not to hurt him, to protect the technique. Because if he can see that you're okay, if he can monitor your life through social media, he won't feel your absence with the necessary intensity. Delete his number from your phone. Not to forget. To avoid the temptation to text in the middle of the night when the longing hits. Avoid the places you used to frequent together. Not because you're running away, because you're creating such a deep vacuum in his life that he'll start to miss you in every familiar corner. Louise Hay discovered that the first day is the hardest for you, but the easiest for him. He's still in the euphoria of freedom. He's still convincing himself that he made the right choice. Let him convince himself. For now, on the first day, your only mission is to disappear so completely that when he looks for you, when he wants to check how you're dealing with the breakup, he finds no trace. And this will plant the first seed of unease in his mind. Day 2. Strategic silence. On the second day, he'll try to contact you. It might be a seemingly innocent message. "Hi, how are you?" It might be any excuse. "I left something at your place." It could even be a provocation. "I saw you blocked me," very mature. Don't respond, it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter how he tries to provoke you. Absolute silence. Louise Hay discovered that the second day is when they make their first test. They want to confirm that you're suffering, that you're missing them, that they still have power over you. When you don't respond, when you remain in absolute silence, they realize they've lost that power. And that makes them deeply uneasy. It's on the second day that they start to question, why isn't she chasing after me? Why isn't she trying to win me back? And then the first cracks appear in their certainty. Day 3. Resistance to manipulation. The third day is when they escalate the pressure. It's when they try to manipulate you emotionally to break your silence. It could be a dramatic message about how much they're suffering. It could be an attempt to arouse jealousy by mentioning someone else. It could even be a cruel provocation to make you react with anger. Don't fall into the trap. Total silence. Louise Hay understood that the third day is the test of your emotional strength. It's when they try all the emotional buttons they know work on you. But here's the secret. Every desperate attempt to make you react is proof that the technique is working. Each unanswered message is another nail in the coffin of their certainty. On the third day, they're still trying to maintain control of the situation. But deep down, they've already started to lose control. And you can feel it. You can feel the despair growing in their messages. Day 4. The turning point. The fourth day is when the first big change happens in their minds. It's when they stop trying to contact you and start to really feel your absence. It's when they realize that you're not going to chase after them, that you're not going to beg, that you simply vanished from their lives. and that terrifies them. Louise Hay called the fourth day the awakening of loss. It's when they finally understand that they've truly lost you, not just as a girlfriend or wife, but as a constant presence in their lives. It's on the fourth day that they start to remember the good times, the late-night conversations, the hugs that made everything all right, the feeling of security that only you provided. And the more they remember, the more unbearable your absence becomes. On the fourth day, you can relax a little, because from now on, they're doing the hard work for you. They're convincing themselves that they made a mistake. Day 5. Silent despair. On the fifth day, they enter total panic. It's when they realize they may have lost you forever. It's when the reality of the separation finally hits. They may try to contact you through mutual friends. They may show up in places they know you frequent. They may even try to use other people to find out how you are. Maintain the silence. Don't give an inch. Louise Hay discovered that the fifth day is when they make their last attempt to maintain pride. It's when they still try to pretend that the decision to end things was correct, but internally, they're in total emotional collapse. It's on the fifth day that they start to idealize you. Your memory becomes perfect in their eyes. All the flaws they used to justify the breakup simply disappear, and they start to wonder, how could I let go of the perfect woman? Day 6. Internal capitulation. The sixth day is when they internally surrender. It's when they admit to themselves that they made the biggest mistake of their lives. It's when they decide they'll do anything to get you back. But they still have pride. They're still afraid of rejection. They still don't know how to approach you after everything that happened. It's on the sixth day that they start mentally rehearsing how they're going to apologize, how they're going to explain the mistake they made, how they're going to convince you to give them a second chance. Louise Hay knew that the sixth day is when victory is almost complete. It's when they've internally already decided they want you back, but they're still gathering the courage to act. It's the day you can start preparing for their return, because on the seventh day, they will come back. Day 7. The inevitable return. On the seventh day, they come back. They always come back. It could be a tearful phone call. It could be a long message asking for forgiveness. It could be an unexpected appearance at your door, but they come back. And when they come back, they'll be completely different from the person who left you 7 days ago. They'll be vulnerable, regretful, desperate to win back what they lost. Louise Hay discovered that 7 days of total absence are enough to break down any pride, any stubbornness, any resistance they may have. 7 days for them to realize that they let go of the best thing they ever had in their lives. But here's what Louise Hay insisted on teaching. When they come back, when they're there in front of you begging for a chance, you can't give in immediately. Because if you give in too quickly, if you forgive too easily, they'll lose respect for you. They'll think they can leave you and come back whenever they want. So when they come back, you listen, you consider. But you don't decide right away. You say, I need time to think. What you did to me was very serious, and it's not something that's resolved with one conversation. And then you give them 2 more days of silence. 2 days for them to be in agony, waiting for your decision. 2 days for them to completely understand what it means to live without you. Only after those 2 days do you decide if you want to give them a second chance. But here's the truth that Louise Hay discovered. After applying this technique, after having someone begging for your forgiveness, you may discover that you no longer want that person in your life. Because during those 7 days of silence, during those 7 days of absolute strength, you may discover that you are much more powerful than you imagined. You may discover that you deserve someone who would never leave you in the first place. And that's the biggest irony of Louise Hay's technique. Sometimes, by winning someone back, you discover that you no longer need to be won back. Sarah, who I mentioned before, applied the technique and won back her ex-boyfriend. But when he came back, when he was there begging for a chance, she realized she didn't feel anything for him anymore. The strength she discovered during the 7 days of silence had shown her that she deserved so much more. Ethan Miller won his wife back, but decided not to go back to her, because during the application of the technique, he understood that someone who abandons a 10-year marriage on a whim doesn't deserve a second chance. Anna took her husband back, but on completely different terms. She had discovered her own power, and she would never again be the submissive wife she once was. Louise Hay's technique doesn't just win people back, it transforms you. It shows you exactly how much power you have over the person who rejected you, and that knowledge changes everything. Because once you know you can get someone back, once you prove to yourself that you have that power, you'll never again accept being treated as disposable. Never again accept crumbs of love. Never again accept empty apologies. Never again accept broken promises. You become a woman who demands the love she deserves, or nothing. And perhaps that is the true magic of Louise Hay's technique. It's not just about winning back the one who left you. It's about reclaiming your own power, your own dignity, your own strength. It's about discovering that you don't need anyone who doesn't recognize your worth immediately. But if you still want to apply the technique, if you still want to prove to yourself that you can get back the one who rejected you, then now you know exactly how to do it. 7 days. Complete silence. Total absence, unbreakable strength. 7 days to transform rejection into reconquest, pain into power, despair into dignity. Louise Hay did it. Dozens of other people did it. Now it's your turn. The question is, do you have the courage to disappear for 7 days? Do you have the emotional strength to maintain absolute silence while they beg for your attention? Because if you do, if you can apply this technique with the precision that Louise Hay taught, in 7 days you will have before you the person who rejected you, completely transformed, vulnerable, regretful, begging for a second chance. And then you will discover something about yourself that you may never have known, that you are powerful enough to win back any heart that ever loved you. And that power will never again let you accept less than you deserve, because rejection isn't about you not being good enough. Rejection is about them not being courageous enough to love you the way you deserve to be loved. And once you understand that, once you prove that to yourself, everything changes. Everything. 7 days. The clock is ticking. The technique is in your mind, the power is in your hands, and will you use it?